Yeah, starting with UFC Vancouver, it was with Todd Duffy's fight. That controversial eye poke.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy. I don't know if you want to call it a finish, but a controversial ending nonetheless.
Yeah. So there's a lot to talk about this one and how we want to relate it to the next event that happened, which was in UFC Mexico City with Jeremy Stevens.
Yeah,
You know,
as far as the highs go for the business, it was
mhm,
definitely a couple of low points, kind of back to back there between the
mhm,
Duffy and the Stevens endings. I think that obviously it was a little bit different as far as when they took place and
mhm.
what people thought about this and that. So I think the thing we'll just get right into it. We're our podcast. We're not trying to shit talk anybody. We're really not. We if anything, we side with the fighter, and the main point, and we've discussed it before, we'll discuss it again because it's obviously a pretty strong theme that we have is there's a lot of people out there that are hating on Duffy, hating on not necessarily Stevens per se, but the fight, just Yair and things. And
Right.
at the end of the day, it's kind of funny because you look at that situation, Duffy getting poked in the eye. Oh, he's an asshole. He's tired. He didn't really want to fight anyways. He was losing on the card. And we've kind of talked about that before just personally where, nobody knows that. Maybe very rarely do you know that, okay, I feel like I'm behind on the card, but you don't really know. You're not sitting there thinking
Mhm.
consciously, oh, I'm behind on the card, so maybe I'll just take it. No, I really don't think that. But, Duffy, he's lambasted for not being able to continue. But then you have what happened a couple of days ago with Bisping literally pulls his eye out of his head on
Oh
a
man.
podcast,
Yeah.
and this guy's celebrated as a hero. Don't get me wrong, I love Bisping. He's
Yeah.
goat.
That's a really good relation bringing up the Bisping thing because then you can see like here's the thing when I want to relate to Duffy's eye poke and Jeremy Stevens is like Jeremy Stevens was so early he didn't feel any like of the pressure really into the fight like oh they already got started and he's like oh I'm being outclassed here or something like that. It was like 15 seconds, but this one was later in the first round with Duffy and Hughes. And Duffy was actually having some success, rocking Hughes and had him against the cage and whatnot. But then people just saw him as tired and stuff like that, and they're like, "All right, that was he was finding his way out right there." And you can see what the generalizations people were making, you know, comparing the two right there. But with what Jeremy Stevens happened right there, like the scratch cornea, we haven't gotten any information on what the extent of the injury with Duffy was. But with that being said, it's like what happened with Jeremy right there that he couldn't even open his eye. I mean, I guess with Duffy's, I'll have to look back again, but I mean, his eye, I believe, was open still. But, we don't know the extent of that damage and how, severe it could have been. Hence, with the Bisping thing, when
Sure,
he got that eye damage, he had to get a damn, prosthetic eye.
sure. Well, this is the thing, man. It's like Bisping. He's a certifiable badass, man. He's as tough
Oh,
as
yeah.
nails. He really is. Not everybody wants to say, hey, you know what? I can't see out of my eye, but I'm still going to go. Especially nowadays, where this is the thing too. We're talking about an eye poke, but this is a lot more than an eye poke because now you're starting to get into the whole what do they get paid per fight? Health insurance, things like that. These things cost money. A lot of people might not realize that. And when you're a fighter, you're paying for your own camp. You're paying for not only that, but when you take your camp from one city to another city, these people have to get paid. This is their job. You're paying for flights. You're paying for hotels. You're paying. Not everybody has comps and things like that.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of things that go into it, and we've come back to the Poirier fight a little bit too. Not, knowing that you can't kind of continue. I feel like obviously it's one of those things that's tough because it's a really violent, tough. You got to be needles and hammer and chisel and everything. It's a tough sport. It's not for everybody. But I think I really do respect guys that can say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to go on because I know I'm not going to give it my best. Not for nothing. Pressure's a lot of it too because Duffy had to know when he can't go. When he's saying I can't go on. He has to know that he's going to get nothing but kickback and flack from this shit. He really. I mean, he has to know that that's going to happen. So So say that he says, you know what? I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for this if I don't continue to fight. So I'm going to keep going. I can't see it in my eye, but I'm going to pretend I'm okay. What happens if he gets hit with a shot that ends his career?
Exactly. That's the big thing right there, and that was what very close to what Bisping's situation was going to be, or most fighters that would have been in Bisping's situation would have stopped fighting. But this is another thing right there. These guys all have different personalities, different circumstances, so it's like not everyone's gonna be as tough as Bisping is in that situation to be like, I'm gonna still chase for that belt with one eye.
I don't even know if it's a tough thing though, because that's like to
Well,
me,
that's
it's
what.
like at the end of the day, I understand the point you're making, but I just want to
Yeah.
reiterate one thing too. We're not saying that Stevens and Duffy aren't tough
No,
for not
exactly
wanting to
not. But that's
continue.
what the fans are like
Sure.
alluding to, where you're like, you're a fighter, you got to fight through it, whatever, blah blah blah. And I hate that. It's just like they are tough. They're in a damn cage right now fighting.
Exactly. That was my
You
point. They're
shouldn't
in there in the first
question
place. That
you
already
shouldn't
makes them
question
tough.
their toughness right there. But they're just looking out for their career. They have families, they have lives and stuff like that. So it's just
There's nothing wrong with wanting to be able to see.
yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that.
and it
And I
tells
think it
you.
just it breaks us down too. It's kind of like obviously the role of a fan is something that's important because without fans there is no UFC. There is no sport. I mean, there's always going to be fighting, but there's no organization. There's no build. The fans are I think with the UFC more so with other sports is I feel like you're more like, for example, when the NBA has a press conference or the NFL has a press conference after a game, there's press there, but there's not necessarily rabid fans. When the UFC does a weigh-in or they do press conferences, it's all fans that are there. So I feel like there's definitely a closeness between fight fans and the UFC, and in this case, the UFC, more so than there is other sports. So that being said, I understand that people feel personally attached to these fighters and these outcomes and things, but at the end of the day, we're sitting here saying that okay. At the end of it, really, the point is at the end of the day, you don't know if that guy can see or not. You don't know the extent of that injury.
Well, that's the thing. What you're talking about right there with the fans and stuff. There's a different set group of fans, and actually, I feel like Todd Duffy, bringing back him up again. He he uh, he said something great about that pre-fight before his fight with Hughes, and that was it was more directed towards the media, but I can relate it to, of course, the fans too. And it was
Oh,
about
that's right.
just
Duffy, he did go on he did say something about that before, which is kind of ironic.
yes, and it was about the fans were but he was really aiming it
Really,
towards
the
the
media
media,
more so than
not
the
not
fans, right?
not respecting the fighters enough. But I do believe, and I'll go into more what he said if I remember everything correctly. But yes, there is a lot of media that, or some media that don't respect the fighters as much. They're just really out there for the clickbaits, and they're just
Sure.
the way they ask these repetitive questions, they're also just trying to poke at the fighters to get them, get like heated stuff like feuds with other fighters and
Right.
all that crap. But it's not us. But you also see a lot of great media out there that are asking the involving questions and about them and great stuff like that. But I also think it's also a big part of the fans, if you put in quotation marks, more like the casuals and stuff, that just watch for a finish. They don't
Sure.
respect it as much.
Well, I think it's important for us to say too, like we're not sitting here and saying, "Hey, you can't have an opinion. You can't be upset about this outcome because you're not a fighter. You can't have an opinion unless you stood in the octagon." Like we're not saying that. We get that not everybody has the ability to. We're not. I don't. I like football. It doesn't mean if I can't like football because I didn't professionally learn how to do this or I didn't play in college. You know what I mean? Like you're a fan. We get it. But with that being said, some fans don't just leave it with saying, "Man, what a piece of shit! This guy couldn't finish the fight." That'd be one thing if you say that kind of in your house under your whatever. But people like will tweet at these guys, they message these guys, they comment on these guys' things. It's like you have no idea what this person went through. This is the thing with Duffy, just in this specific case. This guy is literally coming off an injury, hadn't fought in like 3 years. So the
Yeah.
amount of pressure that he felt to get back in there, the work that he put in to get healthy again, it's not even just physical. It's emotional. It's mental. Those are super, super, looked over things in the fight game is the mental aspect of things and fight psychology. But for him to go through all that stuff, to get back into the octagon to fight someone again, and then for someone to say that, oh, he knew he basically took the easy way out, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Why the hell would you go through a whole camp, get in the thing, do all that stuff, just to not, like to me, if you're just not trying to fight someone, you're just not going to do that. You know what I mean? You're just not going to take the fight.
That's true. But when I can see a little bit of the side of when he is tired and he is against.
But everybody gets tired,
No, no,
man.
but it's like
Everybody
when
gets
you're
tired.
when I think he got rocked in that fight too a little bit, but it was like when you
Sure.
realize that pressure in there, you're like, then you can make it like, okay, maybe he didn't want out, but I just think, well, he also probably didn't think he felt 100% he realizes he is before going to that fight, he's fighting someone that can knock him out. So he's like,
But you know
well,
what?
I don't want to fight someone that's, if I can't, I'm not my
I
100% self.
I definitely think the thought process, and I could be wrong, but like I said, I'm not Duffy, so I can't tell you for certainty. And anybody
Right.
that thinks that they know for sure is full of shit. But what I can say is that I think him saying to himself, "Man, I really can't see. I'm at a disadvantage," was more playing. It was more important to him. Was actually something going through his mind rather than, "Oh, I'm tired. I don't want to be here anyways."
No,
I
yeah.
just I don't see that. I really don't see that.
Well, yeah, and he goes on to say, before that fight with that interview with the media, he was like, you guys don't build us up enough. You don't build up on our stories and really get in depth. And he's also saying, we come off a loss or something like that, and you trash us, and that's pretty much what happened. Like he gets off that,
I
no
just feel like
contest eye poke, and he kind of gets
sure.
trashed. And I believe from some media I saw, where they were like, oh, some people were saying, oh, you wanted out and this and that. So
I just don't
it's
understand. Like,
crazy.
what do people expect? What do you expect to get out of it? Like, what do you gain? Just either watch the fights or don't watch the fights. But to
Hmm.
comment on someone on their toughness or this and that, like at the end of the day, they're a professional fighter. Like, I can't think of a tougher job to have. That man, I got to get up and go to work tomorrow, and I know someone's gonna try to knock my head off.
Hmm.
I could potentially get a a life threatening injury. I could, there's so many things that happen that could happen. I really,
And
to
and
me, it's
here's the
like
thing, like that fight happened. What was that? Back in
a month
September.
ago or so. Yeah,
Yeah, almost a month ago, and no one's talking about this anymore, of course. But
sure.
and I'm not trying to say, hey, we're special here, but I mean, we are talking about it right now, and this is, we're in October 6th right now,
Sure.
and we don't. This is what happened. What I'm trying to mention right now is like these fans and media, they move on after a week, or not even a month. They
Sure.
if it's unless it's a really big month, it lasts a month of talk. But
It's
it,
cyclical.
it it
Everything's
just it
cyclical.
just gets it
It's
just gets washed over. The next event, everyone forgets the last one. But
sure.
we're here. When we see some good ties in, when this was also just two consecutive events that ended in a eye poke no contest, and then like you said, just Bisping. I didn't even make that realization, but him showing you that it just makes a great topic to discuss right now.
Sure. And I think as fans too, you have to kind of understand the fact that
Hmm.
listen, I know obviously when you're watching UFC, there's fight bonuses, there's knockout bonuses, there's
Hmm.
things. So you're kind of predetermined, you're predestined to expect that finish, either a sub or a KO. That's what you want. But you have to kind of acknowledge as a fan that hey, sometimes there's going to be things that happen in there that are totally batshit crazy that you can't plan for, and it's just part of the fight business. When
Exactly.
you're literally, I mean, look at. I honestly can't think of a fight that I've seen that there was no eye pokes, incidental or not. I mean, even the Stipe Cormier fight,
Yeah.
there was eye pokes just because the way people keep their hands up and they position. I mean, it's part. It is what it is. So that being said, when you know that that's something that's going to happen potentially in a fight, you can't be so shocked and upset that it happens in a way that someone is unable to continue. It just kind of it's like one of those things like with basketball with jumping. At some point or another, you're going to land on somebody's foot, right? You're going to sprain your ankle. Nobody says, "Oh, what a fucking loser that guy is for not getting back up and playing on a sprained ankle." So I think the biggest thing is the fact that you could see if a guy breaks his leg. Gordon Hayward, one of my, I'm a Celtics fan. When he almost knocked his fucking foot off a couple seasons ago, coming down, landing wrong, dislocated his ankle, everything was terrible. You can
Hmm.
see that. But I think because it's something that you can't physically see, like even Mike Perry with his nose or Cowboy with his eye popped out of his head, you can see that stuff. So I think it's more accepting for people. I think people need to do a better job of accepting things that they can't see too.
Right. That's a good point right there, man.
I mean, I'm
Now,
not trying to be philosophical, like, oh, there's inside wounds that people have too. But at the end of the day, what if Duffy's eye is fucked up? What if it comes out that he's got a scratch cornea and he can never fight again?
those are
Now this guy,
serious. Yeah.
his whole income is gone, and now all we've done is talk shit about him because oh, look at him, he was tired, he was getting beat anyways. So what?
And that's what I would I'm hoping he recovers or whatever. I mean, I'm sure he's recovered, who knows, but I know he had to get a checkup just but I'd like to
I mean,
hear
they're going to
from
be
him
kind of
soon.
secretive what they do too because they don't
Yeah.
want opponents to know. And I mean, look at Bisping. Literally, it's been how long since he fought, and we're just finding out about this stuff now. I mean, even on the Rogan podcast, he was kind of like, Rogan's like, your eye looks great. What did you? He's like, And Rogan's like, "Oh, you don't want to talk about it?" He's like, "No, no, I'll talk." It's they're still even though he's not fighting, they're still hesitant to let someone know that's like, "Oh, this is something that could potentially be something that affects me long term."
Yeah. So going to Jeremy Stevens right now, because I really want to talk a little bit about that one too, is you know, that was his eye was shut for I mean even a longer period of time after that fight was over with. I
Right.
forget how long after, but it was still a good time until the next day, or he had an eye patch on for maybe a little while, but it wasn't like a long like over a day or so, 24
Sure.
hours. But he recovered. I guess it was like the next day actually, where he was already talking on camera saying, "Hey, I want that fight again, this and that." But I mean that was a almost a pretty good bullet dodge where now they're able to rebook that fight for UFC on ESPN 6, which headlines Dominic Reyes and Chris Weidman.
Well,
Good.
let me ask you a question. So, speaking of rebooking a fight, what if? How do you feel about if any fight that ends in some kind of incident like that, they automatically rebook?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
Why
a lot
not?
of
Right?
fight, huh?
Why not? Right?
I mean, it would make sense, of
Run it
course.
back.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I feel like they might do that with the Duffy and Hughes fight. I could have seen the same. Well, let me ask you this: would you have seen the same for Kat Zagano and Megan Anderson?
100%. I would have ran that fight back.
Yeah,
Definitely would have ran that fight back. But I feel
yeah,
like at the end of the day, I love Kat. She's one of my favorite fighters, and I don't want to get too involved into her because we could do a whole podcast just on her and the shit
sure.
she's
She
been
has
with.
a
But
she has a really really
her
in-depth
story is
story.
just
Oh my
incredible.
gosh.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You have to. I feel like you have to.
Of course. I mean, especially if it's a no contest, it's like, well, then
Well,
the fight
this is
never
like
got to a
here's the thing,
decision.
right? What's like the biggest thing that people get pissed off about nowadays? Interim belts, right? Interim belts. Why? Because there's not a clear, decisive champion. So to me, it's no different with finishes. Unless there's a clear, decisive finish, run the fight back,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
Makes sense. I mean, it's obviously you don't want to. I'm not talking about that with a decision because if you didn't get the decision, you didn't get the decision. I mean, I know that stuff happens, but we're talking about something kind of crazy like a freak accident. I mean, I don't know, like even the Silva fight where he snapped his leg in half. Yeah, maybe the next fight, run it back. It's some freak thing, finish it
Right.
off because you want, people want the finish. You're mad at Duffy because you didn't get the finish. You want the finish, so let's do it. Let's run it back again.
Exactly. Yeah, and now going back again with Stevens and Yair, there was like a lot of I think there was like initial hate. I mean, not from me, but like from a lot of people, like, oh wow, Stevens this and that. But like, that's another guy who's like
Totally.
never question the toughness of that guy, the
Yeah,
wars
it
and the
definitely
stuff
got a
he's going
little kind
through.
of gray at the end there, as far
But
as
then,
like when,
the script kind of flipped because
yeah,
Yair, he started saying things, afterwards, like, blaming it all on Stevens for not continuing and stuff, and then he's starting
yeah,
to
he
get a
should
lot
have
of
had
hate.
tougher retinas, I guess.
Oh my gosh, craziness. So I'm so glad they were able to rebook that fight. What happened was with the fight night that Dominic Reyes and Chris Weidman are headlining. It had Zabit versus Calvin Cater or
Right, right, right.
Cater, and but that fight fell out and got rebooked somewhere else because I guess Zabit got injured. But what is great is then they come in because that's like another like exciting fight like that has a cool technician and
I
whatnot.
think a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was the first round too, so quick in the first round, like the turnaround of that fight. I mean,
Well,
unless Stevens is
yeah,
really hurt, there's
that
not like a medical suspension you're going to be looking at. They didn't
exactly.
do. It's not like they were 3 or 4 rounds into something, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Well, that's why I was saying I'm glad that they were able to book it really, a quick
I was honestly
turnaround right
surprised that it
there.
got rebooked so fast. I thought it was going to be kind of one of those things that they just were like, oh, whatever, we'll do something else again. But
Yeah. I mean, it was good that, Stevens' eye didn't get,
yeah,
too
that's
injured right
lucky,
there.
man. You're dodging a bullet. I mean, look at
Man.
Zingano. She was really messed up for a while.
Oh gosh, yeah. Dang, I forgot about
And
that, but
that's the craziest thing too.
she
It's like
was
if
for
you
a
think
while.
about it, that was her last UFC fight. So it's like, man, that's especially she could lose 100 fights in a row and she's still looking for that 101st fight. So that has to bother her tremendously. The fact that that was her last fight in the UFC. I think she'll be back. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know.
there was some talk. If I can remember what she had a little interview with Hawani a while back. But she was saying that I guess she had to do some little thing for ESPN Plus, like her show and whatnot.
Yeah, she's doing something behind the
Yeah,
cameras, I
but I
think.
know she's gonna be fighting for probably some other organizations, and then I think she'll find her way back to UFC, most
Yeah.
likely. There's a chance because she said she still wants that Holly Holm fight.
Man, you know what? I would even. I'd love to see her. See, this is tough because I'd love to see her fight Nunez again since she was the last person to stop Nunez. But I mean, obviously, I know they're never going to book that fight unless she gets a couple wins under the belt, you know.
Right.
But it's just, you know, be one of those things. I'd be really interested to see that matchup,
Yeah, man.
especially with Cyborg gone. I mean, it's like who do you put against Nunez? But